My name is Anton Zitnik and I'm one of the Senior Occupational Health and Safety Consultants here at the Victorian Chamber. What we're going to do today is to talk about 6 of the work-related factors and specifically how they're impacting workplaces during COVID-19. These 6 work-related factors are critically important to identify, risk assess and control at any time, but particularly so during the current times. So let's start by talking about high and low job demands. When we run mental health training at the Victorian Chamber, we have a brainstorming exercise that we do asking participants to come up with common mental health hazards. And the first thing people always talk about within seconds is some variation of high and low job demands. This is often expressed as unachievable deadlines, not enough hours in the day to do the work allocated, insufficient resourcing and things like that. It's important to note here that when we're talking about high and low job demands, we're not talking about peaks and troughs in work intensity that we all experience no matter what industry we're in. We're talking about workloads that are structured in a way where there is consistently more to do than time available to do it in. If this is occurring in your workplace during COVID-19 or at any time, what you have basically is an uncontrolled hazard. This is conceptually the same as having a cable lying across a busy walkway between the workstations and the kitchen. It is a hazard. Someone is going to get hurt sooner or later. As I said earlier, what's interesting during COVID-19 is the variety of ways this has impacted employees. I know people, and I'm sure you do too, who are working long hours at the moment to meet job demands. This could be because of the industry they work in or because of rapid restructuring within an organisation leading to allocation of additional tasks. And we also know of people who may have kept their job but are struggling at the moment to find purpose and direction in the work that they're doing. Imagine, for example, that you'd spent the last year of your working life working on a project that was connected with the Grand Prix, or maybe working on a product or a service that just doesn't seem that relevant anymore in the current times. So we need to watch out here for employees not only who are feeling overworked, but also those who feel underworked, bored, under-challenged, directionless. That can be equally stressful as having too much to do. Work-life balance has also been dramatically disrupted for a lot of us at the moment. If you talk with someone who's spent any amount of time working from home in the past, you'll understand that it's a challenge to set up routines and structures in your working from home arrangements that allow you to do your best work and also distinguish between home life and working life. And because so many of us have transitioned to working from home in such a short space of time, combined with the possibility that others in our household may also be working from home and that we have carers' responsibilities, this is causing a massive disruption to our traditional sense of work-life balance. And as I said earlier, anyone with school or kindergarten-age kids will be experiencing the profound impact that those additional carers' responsibilities are having on one's ability to meet work demands. So let's talk now about what we can actually do to address these risks. Firstly, never forget that the health, safety and well-being of your people is the most important thing here. In spite of everything that has changed, the one thing that hasn't is the legal, financial and moral obligation to provide a safe workplace for your people, both physically and mentally. The second thing to do is to make sure that you have systems in place whereby you're able to identify and control situations where employees might be exposed to excessive job demands. And that's going to mean different things depending on what type of workplace you are. But it's worth reflecting for a moment on what a workplace system actually is. So think for a moment about the different systems that you have in your workplaces. You might have a system to take care of stock control, for example, or quality assurance. Or you might have a system around rostering, for example. And some of the elements of a workplace system are things like rules and audits and regular checks and workplace policies and delegated responsibilities. So with that in mind, ask yourself, what system do I have in my workplace to ensure that my employees are not exposed to excessive job demands? What are the rules? What are the structures? And who's responsible for checking them? And these are systems that you should have available in your workplace all the time, but they become particularly important during COVID-19. Another really important point here is workplace flexibility. Providing flexible workplace arrangements for your employees is a really important thing to do at the best of times, and it becomes doubly important during COVID-19. So important here is to be realistic about what you can expect from your employees during this time, particularly those who've got additional carers' responsibilities. Try to focus on the core aspects of a job that need to get done and work collaboratively and consultatively with your employees to work out how they can meet the core demands of the job. One of the key themes we talk about when conducting safety training is the importance and also the legal obligation of consultation with your employees. and there's never been a more important time to consult with your employees. So this means having an honest and genuine two-way dialogue with your employees about their capacity to meet job demands and what the key needs of the business are to keep going and to recover as the COVID-19 restrictions gradually ease. The second work-related factor that I want to talk about is poor support. Supporting your employees is important at the best of times, doubly so now. And the first bullet point on the slide here is really the question you need to ask yourself as an employer. Do my employees have what they need to get the job done? Do they have the IT systems, the tools, the budget, the training, experience, the human resources to get the job done? And if the answer to that is no, then again, you have an uncontrolled hazard in your workplace that you need to control as a matter of priority. We talk often in training sessions about the importance of surveying your staff anonymously to get a sense of the level of mental health risk in your organisation. And with this particular work-related factor of poor support, you can get a sense very quickly of how supported your employees feel simply by asking them. It's a pretty simple task just to put a few questions together into a survey tool and to ask your employees if they feel like they have what they need to get the job done. Do they feel supported to complete tasks that involve strong emotional content? And from there, you can get a good sense as to how supportive your internal workplace culture is. So a little bit about some best practice in this area. Firstly, some rapid and substantial investment in technology if you haven't already done so. Plenty of employees around Australia are coming to terms with the reality of working from home. And those challenges are made particularly acute if your IT systems are not working in the way that they could be. So investing in technology, particularly around video conferencing, is a very valuable use of your time and resources. If you do have staff that are working in roles they might be unfamiliar with, make sure you train them. Give them the time to get up to speed before you expect full productivity from them. Important as well is to point your employees in the direction of resources they can access to maintain their own mental health. We work with a lot of businesses who are taking their first steps in talking about mental health openly in the workplace. And if you've not talked about it in the past, now is definitely the time to start. When communicating with your employees, be upfront and authentic about the impact that COVID-19 is having on our mental health. If you do run an employee assistance program, now's a great time to advertise that internally to your employees and give them a sense of the range of services they're able to access. And if you don't have an EAP, that's fine. We're fortunate in Australia to have so many excellent free community-based resources that you can point your employees in the direction of. And you'll find all the links you need in your participant booklets to organisations like Beyond Blue, SANE, Black Dog Institute, Lifeline, places like that. Another thing that many employers are doing is establishing good peer-to-peer support networks. So think about in a normal workplace, the friendships, the social connectivity, the water cooler conversation that goes on. As employers, we need to ask ourselves, well, what does that look like during COVID-19? How do we stay socially connected? And again, this is going to vary from employer to employer depending on the kind of work you do. For some, it might be setting up a buddy system where two employees within a team check in with each other to see how they're doing. For others, it could be organising fun activity and social events via video conferencing. It's going to be different for everyone. So the next work-related factor I want to talk about is low role clarity. Again, this is a challenge at the best of times and particularly so now. Low role clarity takes many forms. It can be things like having an out-of-date position description. It can mean poorly defined responsibilities where there's constant interpersonal conflict about who's doing what. And it can also be an individual employee's inability to see how the work they're doing fits in with the overall purpose of the organisation. And it's easy to see that during COVID-19, these problems can become exacerbated. Businesses are experiencing rapid change, employees are having to take on new roles and responsibilities, and also tasks that are possibly unfamiliar to them. Working from home also throws up a whole range of challenges about how performance and productivity can be measured. So in terms of best practice, what you can do here is to make sure you clearly define who is responsible for doing what is the scope of each individual role, what is its purpose, and how can you define tasks in a way that minimises overlapping responsibilities and the interpersonal conflict that inevitably comes with that. So this may take the form of updated position descriptions. It could be a revised organisational structure or business plan. It's not the form it takes, rather the outcome, which is important. And that outcome is that your employees on a day-to-day basis are clear about what they're doing and how their work fits in to the overall purpose of the organisation. Another thing you can do is to make sure that the way you are measuring the performance of your employees is based on outcomes. So this means measuring performance on the basis of what actually needs to be done rather than the amount of hours a person might spend sitting in front of their computer. But transitioning to this way of working does involve some risks around excessive job demands. If you're measuring performance based on outcomes, you also need to have systems in place, as I said earlier, to make sure that your employees are not taking on excessive workloads. There is also an opportunity here to give your employees a sense of purpose, of working toward a common goal. As I said, all employees need to have a sense of how the work they're doing contributes to the purpose of the organisation. And for many businesses at the moment, that might be a question of the fundamental survival of the business. And there is an opportunity here to give your employees a sense of teamwork and solidarity if they have a sense that the work they are doing is contributing to the continuity and recovery of your business. We're now going to talk about the work-related factor of poor change management. We know that poorly managed change is a significant source of stress to employees at any time, and at the moment there is rapid and disruptive change going on everywhere. And the problems that businesses typically experience in this space often have to do with a lack of communication and also a lack of visible and authentic leadership. During these times, your employees are naturally hungry for information. They want to know and understand what is going on, what the plan is. And the big risk here is that the communication that is offered by the employer is not regarded as the most definitive source of truth. This can occur simply because the employer just doesn't communicate often enough, and also because managers just aren't trusted as reliable sources of information. You know you have a problem when gossip and rumours are starting to circulate and employees are getting their information via hearsay. We also know that one of the factors in determining whether a change is successful or unsuccessful is employee perception around whether the change is fair or not. As I said, during COVID-19, change is rapid and dramatic. The same principle applies here though. Do employees perceive the COVID-19 related changes you're making as a business as fair? Employees are far more likely to accept and adopt a change if they perceive that the changes have been fair and that they've been genuinely consulted with throughout the process. So the key here as a business owner or as a manager is to be a trusted source of truth. Communicate regularly with your employees. It doesn't matter if you don't have all the answers at hand at any given point in time. Be honest with your employees about what you know, what you don't know, and when it is you're likely to know something, and will communicate further. Be upfront and acknowledge openly the impact that COVID-19 is having on the mental health of your employees. And make sure also that you're encouraging your employees to seek out reliable sources of information. This might mean reliable internal information about what's going on in your organisation, but also reliable external information about COVID-19, such as you can find from many reputable organisations like the World Health Organization, government websites, things like that. For many businesses, their survival up until now and their recovery beyond now is going to depend on their ability to keep their employees motivated and working toward a common goal. And this brings us to the important work-related factor of low recognition and reward. So we'll talk about this generally and then specifically in relation to COVID-19. Recognition and reward is a major factor in workplace productivity, retention, motivation, pretty much everything we care about from an HR point of view. For employees, it comes down to fundamental questions such as, do I feel appreciated for the work I do? How often does my employer, particularly my line manager, say thank you or recognize the extra effort I might have put in above and beyond what I had to do? And we know that in workplaces where this is lacking, that is when employees start to absent themselves from the workplace. And this can take the form of poor productivity, otherwise known as presenteeism, absenteeism, and also high levels of turnover. So during COVID-19, the challenge here for employers is, how can I find ways to reward and recognize my employees, often in a remote working environment? If I have asked employees to take on work that they might not be familiar with, how do I say thank you? How do I acknowledge that? And above all, if I want my business to survive and recover and flourish in the future, how can I, during these times, maintain that positive and engaged workplace culture? And best practice in this area comes back to that idea of systems that we talked about when we discussed high and low job demands. So as a business owner or a manager, ask yourself, what system do I have in place to provide positive feedback and support to my employees? If I do have existing reward and recognition systems that I had prior to COVID-19, how do they translate to a remote working environment? Most importantly, how do my employees feel rewarded and appreciated for the work that they're doing? This is going to differ dramatically depending on what type of business you are, what industry you work in, but the end result should be the same. Your employees are motivated, they're engaged, they've got a high intention to remain at your business as you recover, and they're producing the best work they possibly can under difficult circumstances. We're going to now talk a bit about the challenge of remote and isolated work. Now, this is a challenge that goes beyond COVID-19. So in normal times, we'd be talking about people who work alone for long periods. We'd be talking about fly-in, fly-out workers, and also people who are home-based. And of course, now we have more home-based employees than we've ever had in our history before. So as I said previously, the main challenges here have to do with that transition to a remote working environment. In terms of best practice, I want to focus here mainly on the last 2 points because I've covered the first 2 in previous slides. It's really important as a manager when working with employees from home that you take the time just to check in with them to see how they are. So this could be a video call just for a catch-up, just to see how they're doing. One of the challenges with working remotely is that we lack those spontaneous face-to-face interactions we'd normally have in a workplace. And we might get on a video conference and just start talking about work-related things. The key here as a manager is to take the time to put work to one side and just check in with the individual to see how they are. In our training sessions, we spend a lot of time educating managers about how to pick up on the early warning signs of poor mental health in their employees. And when your employees are working remotely, that is challenging to do, but it is not impossible. So if you are checking in regularly with your employees via phone or video conferencing, look out for those telltale signs like sudden changes in behaviour, employees being unable to cope with responsibilities that they'd normally take in their stride, poor quality work or impaired decision making, and generally unusual behaviour that is just out of character for the employee that you're dealing with. It is harder to observe when we're lacking those face-to-face interactions in a workplace, and yet not impossible. If you do suspect that one of your employees is struggling with poor mental health, encourage them to seek help, either through your employee assistance program if you have one, or through their GP, or, as I said earlier, through any one of a number of excellent community-based resources that we're fortunate to have in Australia.